Sorry about that, folks. The darn camera overheated again. Be glad when that mount comes in. Anyway, as I was saying, I was a little nervous as we were leaving because right as we were heading for the door, a cop called out into the radio, shots fired, shots fired. They didn't have eyes on it. And I had an idea of where the protests were. They were within 1 to 2 blocks of my route. But we'll just say I was very glad to put that city to my taillights. Now, I have seen people apologize for the looting. I've seen people take up for it, that it's understandable, that in the situation it's justified. And then there's articles coming out that a lot of these riots and looting are instigated by white supremacist groups. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. I don't know if it ever will be confirmed. But you've literally got Black Lives Matter activists taking up for the actions that are allegedly perpetrated by white supremacist groups. But here's where I come down on it. If I am protesting about anything in the streets, and I'm holding my sign, and I'm yelling what I'm yelling, and I'm being loud but peaceful as far as my actions, and I come across a dude that is trying to, or several dudes that are trying to tip a car over, light it on fire, kick in windows, and everything else, why am I jumping on that bandwagon? I don't get that. I don't get that as a defense. But I do understand that the mob mentality, if one person does it, everybody's going to do it. So I can see that point of view, but I don't understand why everybody's jumping on that bandwagon, so to speak. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I think it's ironic the way that this is unfolded in the news. I also think it's ironic that we're now no longer talking about coronavirus. But I tell you what, if you were a conspiracy-minded person, which with the availability of information everywhere is becoming increasingly easier to be, I can definitely see that there could be a conspiracy for 2020. Okay, I'm going to rewind. Now, I'm actually not going to get into that on this episode. I'm not going to do that. But I think that there could be a conspiracy for 2020. But I had a very long, at length discussion with friends of mine concerning all this via Facebook Messenger. And there's, we'll say, a lot of disagreement politically about all this, a lot of political disagreement between the group of us that was chatting. I've got someone that's in the conversation. There was 4 of us and one kind of dropped out, but essentially you've got Republican, diehard Democrat, and kind of a middle of the road independent-ish area. So we talked for about an hour, and at first I said some things and that ticked a couple people off, and then I went into longer explanations of why I said what I said in my point of view, and they kind of, oh yeah, that makes sense. So you take 3 differing political points of view, and by the end of the conversation, even if we didn't fully agree with something, we're saying, look, I'm not the most informed about this specific aspect of it, but I'll take your word for it, and if you're right, I agree with you. One of the things, for example, was that the Metro Louisville area has more cops per capita than a lot of other cities and than any other city in my state of Kentucky. So it was interesting to see how we all came down on that, and do they need that many cops? Do this, that, and the other? Because they had more cops per capita. Each cop had a smaller designated area to patrol. And I made the counter argument that there's a lot of crime up there in certain areas. There's typically not a week that goes by without a homicide in certain neighborhoods of that town, city, whatever. So I can see both sides of that argument, but what caused it to turn that way? And is that why the police force got bigger? Did it get bigger for other reasons? I don't know. But we had a very interesting and in-depth discussion, and we ended up getting off on another topic and ended up having to say goodnight. But it was a very good discussion. And in my opinion, the discussion and the reason why for all this isn't being had. In all news outlets, they're using, in my opinion, a very outdated method for their format. And I don't know, given the way that cable news and satellite news work, I don't know that there's a way to fix it, given the confines of their money-making apparatus. As a case in point, Bernie Sanders, whenever he's on the news or campaigning or doing a panel, he sounds like a crazy old socialist nut. Okay? My opinion, I could be dead wrong on that. That's my opinion. Whenever he interviews on news, he sounds like a crazy old loud socialist. Okay? Now, fast forward, about a year ago, he did an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience where they were on for over an hour. I think maybe close to 2. And the only time that Bernie Sanders got interrupted was for Joe Rogan literally to slow him down and get him to unpack something. So, okay, here's what I think. Hang on just a second, Bernie. I'm not going to interrupt you. I want to understand why you think that. Run me through the whole thing, start to finish. And so he was slowing him down and giving him more time to speak his piece. And even though I still disagree with a great deal of Bernie Sanders' policy platform, Bernie Sanders didn't sound like a crazy old socialist nut. He sounded like a very well thought out, level-headed man. I disagreed with his thoughts, but he was level-headed sounding. So, I think that the conversation that needs to happen isn't happening. Because of the mainstream news format, I don't think it can happen. I think that it's going to be a left versus right scream fest on all their panels until something changes, and I don't know that it can. Because you've got your 5 to 10 minutes before a commercial break, you bring on 6 people, everybody starts yelling over one another, trying to get a word in edgewise, and you get exactly nowhere. So, and I wish that everybody would quit speaking in these broad generalizations, kill all cops are bastards, pardon my language. That would be no different than saying all blacks are looters, in my opinion. Granted, the cops chose the career, but the majority of them are trying to do something good for one reason or another. And I don't think that handling the issue in this blanket approach on both sides is going to work. I also think that the job descriptions and the occupation for law enforcement officer they attract two types of people, and I don't think that you want that. I think you want to attract one type of person. I think by and large that when you are looking for someone to serve as a law enforcement officer, you get either the person that genuinely wants to be a public servant and to do the best things that he is capable of for his community, or you get Macho Man that has to go out there and prove something. I've had interactions with both. The interactions with Macho Men are few and far between, but I've had interactions with both. And I can understand to a certain extent the appeal of the law enforcement officer in that job. It's not for me, but I can understand why you would do it, especially as a younger man, where your tendencies to thrill seek are higher. So I don't think that in a lot of cases, I think that in some cases we're getting macho men or adrenaline junkies, and that's not what you're after. I've watched a lot of videos where there's a lot of cops that are the first to draw their weapon, the first to this, that, or the other. But I've seen even more videos where the cops give every opportunity to de-escalate the situation, and for whatever reason, the criminal won't. So I think the majority of cops are genuinely better than the media would let them be portrayed as. But those aren't the stories that lead, and those aren't the stories that generate public following and ratings, for that matter. So I think I've said about all I need to say on this one. Again, I'm sorry for the interrupt halfway through. I'm just frustrated because none of everything that's being discussed is boiled down to nearly meme simplicity. The basic discussion right now can be had in 3 sentences. Or the discussion that's happening right now can be had in 3 sentences, and that's a meme. That's not a serious discussion. And in my opinion, there needs to be a serious discussion to try to make a dent in all this. And I think that the police do need to make some changes. I think that the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movements and other movements that have been protesting during all this, I think that they need to make some changes. I think that police need to come out publicly in a lot of places and apologize for what they've done. I also think that they need to make a guarantee that if you do nothing to resist arrest or what's happening to you at law enforcement hands, if a cop tried to come up and arrest me for driving with a burned out tag light bulb, I'm going to be ticked off. That's not an arresting offense. That's not even a moving violation. That's an equipment violation. So I got pulled over twice in a week for a bad tag light. I got pulled over once. I was working. I didn't have time to fix it. So, and the cop was a little irritated the second go around because he had already pulled me over. I'm like, look, every day since you've pulled me over, I've been working 10 hours a day, and I work an hour away from where I live, so I haven't had the time. So, but I think that police departments across the nation should make a guarantee: if you do nothing to resist arrest, even if we're in the wrong, you will get your day in front of a judge, and we guarantee nothing bad will happen to you if you do nothing to resist arrest. I think that all police departments should make that guarantee. I also think no-knock raids should be deemed unconstitutional, because you're talking about, in a lot of cases, kicking in someone's door at 2, 3 in the morning while they're in bed asleep, and the first thing they're going to think is, someone's breaking into my house, not, oh, I'm getting raided by the police. So, especially if it's a law-abiding citizen, because in the case of Breonna Taylor, she had no criminal history, nothing on her background, and neither did her boyfriend. They were both, for all intents and for everything that is known, they were both upstanding citizens doing their job and everything like they should be. So I think no-knock raids should be a thing of the past. Also, another thing I didn't mention is, in the Breonna Taylor instance, the police did make a mistake and they raided the wrong address on a no-knock warrant. The mayor of Louisville, Greg Fisher, did suspend no-knock raids for the time being. I think they should be deemed unconstitutional. I think that the police should have to knock loud enough to wake you up, let you know that they're the police and they are coming in. My opinion, could be wrong. So, anyway, thanks for tuning in, y'all. Stay safe. Avoid metro areas for the time being, if at all possible. Don't think that they're safe, especially at night. Long story short, I'm going to have to go to a doctor's office in a metro area for a follow-up appointment for something, and they've got a satellite location that's a little further away, but it's not in the downtown area of Louisville. So I'm going to that one, even though it's about 5 to 10 miles longer and definitely several more minutes, because I don't want to go to downtown Louisville at all. So anyway, y'all stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry that this one got cut in half and ran long, but a lot on my mind today. Y'all stay safe. Thanks.